During Guatemala's civil war, about 200,000 people, mostly indigenous and unarmed Mayan civilians, were killed or disappeared. A village of indigenous Mayans set up this tent city in front of the nation's capital. The sign asks for basic human rights and a stop to the bombings, automatic weapons, and forced relocations. San Simon is the patron saint of Sunil in the highlands. Worshippers ask him for a variety of favors, including revenge, love, and protection. One fortunate irony was that, despite the war, Guatemalans did not usually suffer widespread food shortages. These vegetables were plentiful and fresh, but I'm not sure about this unrefrigerated meat. Next to the market is this 400-year-old church, built atop a pre-Columbian temple. As smoke rises from food stalls, people are setting up early on market day. Few people have refrigeration, so they must buy food frequently. Markets are the only way many farmers can earn money for other purposes. The Petén jungle in northeastern Guatemala was far from most of the slaughters, so war refugees began moving here. I shot this in 1994, just days after the president outlawed deforestation in the Petén. In 1997, I returned to find this landscape. Refugees and illegal logging had destroyed much of the vegetation. Note the tire tracks atop this mountain. The people who had moved to this remote area with no electricity or potable water raised crops and livestock. Children often helped their family instead of attending school. In Zunil, this 10-year-old boy is fertilizing crops. In Todos Santos, Cuchimatan, the 6-year-old girl is tending sheep at 8,500 feet above sea level. The soils in the highlands are very fertile, but due to the mountainous terrain, harvesting can prove difficult. In addition, people have only basic tools, so the harvest is often by hand. Even babies attend. The sandy area in the upper right is due to a recent earth tremor. Cilantro is a major staple of Guatemalan cooking. So are carrots. Transporting crops to market is usually basic, as these barefoot women can attest. The first woman has no front teeth. Guatemalans use a variety of modes of transportation. Some, like these chicken buses, are safer than the always overloaded pickups, as you can see. At times, I rode up a mountain atop a chicken bus. A few times, I used a horse, and I dried my wet feet on the roof of this Lake Atitlan ferry. Though education was mandatory through the 6th grade, poverty and war required even children to work, sometimes with a family member, but often alone, or with another child, like these two boys hunting for freshwater crabs in Lake Atitlan. In the mountain town on the left is the school where these boys should be learning. Children's tasks vary greatly, from helping moms sell masks on market day to lugging firewood at the family's small mountaintop motel. A short break and enjoying their dog before returning to work. In Todo Nicapan, this woman and her father work on large conventional looms at home. In Todos Santos Cuchimatan, this woman and her daughter are using smaller and far more common backstrap looms. The most physically demanding tasks were usually done by men, and almost always performed by hand. Sharpening a machete blade, carving a new canoe out of a tree trunk, slowly and methodically, creating a new cabinet, and chopping firewood are just a few examples. I frequently saw men carrying heavy loads, especially uphill, as these two men are doing, either to home or to market. This 94-year-old tailor used a foot-operated sewing machine. There was no such thing as woman's work to young men who needed to earn money. At least they hadn't been drafted yet. Entertainment varied. Due to lack of electricity, marimbas were common in the Petén jungle. In the more modern highlands, this mobile trailer with video games fascinated these indigenous women. A medical project along the Rio Dulce also featured an elementary school. Children arrived before sunrise in the only transportation available. Supplies were basic, but the students did enjoy recess. despite the lack of electricity and running water. Leaving Aktenamit, I traveled 2 days by small boat and foot to a deforested mountaintop. There, this man teaches all 6 grades. Makshimon, the patron saint of indigenous towns around Lake Atitlan, is often depicted as a baby with a beard in a manger. Worshippers ask forgiveness for various vices, including drinking, or they pray for revenge. In exchange, they provide liquor, money, or, in this case, burning incense and cigarettes. 60 miles and a 3-hour bus ride away, in the mountain town of Sunil, San Simon is the patron saint. Worshippers dress him up in various clothing, where they set up candles, flowers, and figurines. Along the Rio Dulce, the sweet river in English, despite its pollution, few people had electricity, but this evangelical Protestant church's congregation had invested in an expensive generator. Of course, a few of the young folks paid more attention to having fun and to a bat that entered than to the service. Todos Santos Cuchimatan sits at 8,300 feet in the Altiplano, the high plain region of Guatemala. I met this woman in town, and she invited me to her 23rd birthday celebration, conducted by a 94-year-old shaman. In his indigenous language, he performed the ceremony, which included burning candles at his altar and sacrificing corn to the mountain gods. I shot the first 4 photos at various highland marketplaces. As you can tell from the photo with the hanging meat, food hygiene is often substandard. What the woman and girls were selling in the 4th photo, I have no idea. They spoke only their indigenous language, so I did not understand. At 8,600 feet lies San Francisco el Alto, St. Francis of the Heights. This huge mountaintop market featured animals from chickens to sheep to pigs. Livestock in other highlands markets was rare. I met this lady at various markets during my first 3 annual visits during the Civil War. Her cheese provided my only easy source of calcium. Foods in the highlands were simple yet nutritious. As market day begins, a man warms his hands over a griddle of tortillas, a main food staple. This corn-based drink was warm and sweet. Note the sink and glassware at the lower right. Usually, the chickens were killed the morning they were fried. A full meal at this Highlands eatery cost 6 quetzales, or 96 cents. These meals too cost 96 cents each. And for 32 cents, you could get a fresh coconut with a straw. The terrain of the highlands is incredibly varied and scenic. Lake Atitlan is surrounded by mountains and indigenous villages. Fishermen use cayucos, or canoes. The Chichicastenango Cemetery is the 2nd highest in Guatemala. In Sunil, a barefoot Mayan woman poses with the cemetery in the background. Graves face the morning's rising sun. The Popol Vuh Museum featured this ancient Mayan woman's grave. For $6, I took a 2-hour bus ride up a mountain so that I could clamber up dried lava, mostly on my hands and knees, to watch the adjacent volcano, Pacaya, erupt. I, with the camera, sat on top of the small bus. Arriving at the summit, I shot this, just one of dozens of eruptions that night. In Tikal National Park, despite the Civil War, renovations were well underway. This temple of the Great Jaguar contains the tomb of an ancient Mayan king. This building served as the home of the high priest. As you can see from my hat and photographer's vest, heat and humidity ruled. Medical care was sporadic at best. Cholera outbreaks occurred periodically, especially in rural and in poor urban areas. This cholera bed was in a 1-room building in the Petén jungle. This girl, 4, had discolored teeth due to lack of brushing. Here, 2 dentists visiting from Spain examined a girl's teeth. The dentist pulled the next patient's tooth without anesthetic. Medical outreach occurred in remote jungle areas. Nurses and other healthcare workers provided rabies vaccinations, prenatal care, a rarity in the region, and immunizations, also rare. The nervous girl in back is next. Back at Aktenamit, a dehydrated baby received intravenous electrolytes. Here, several nurses responded at 4 a.m. to an apparent heart attack patient. Despite the war, life continued on as usual in most areas. Washing clothes was frequently a communal effort for women, shown here along Lake Atitlan, and these women at a communal well. But sometimes a woman experienced hours of solitude. Most people in rural Guatemala dried clothing using solar energy. A former oil can served as a water jug for grinding corn. Everyone in the family, including young children, helped with the little ones, whether feeding them or carrying them on their backs. This tourist in a mountain village learned to weave using a backstrap loom. An indigenous woman's head wrap, seen from above. Virtually every marketplace had vendors selling backpacks, leather goods, and a variety of other items. I returned home with more than my share of them. These women produced specialized writing paper, all by hand. A banana tree was chopped down. Then the trunk was sliced up and boiled for hours. After that, the pulp was chopped up by hand and then rinsed in a nearby stream that also served as the area's water supply. After bleaching, the now white pulp was put in molds and dried. The pricey paper was then sold in large cities. The 5-day process took place behind this home, where I stayed for 7 days while photographing. The Civil War ended December 29, 1996. Now might be a good time for a visit.